Hello again, this is Yalak Emmett. You can reach me at yalak-emmett@outlook.com. Today's lesson is about identity and is entitled The Real Jakes. Jakes is just a play on words, so to speak, dealing with Jacob from the Bible. And it's basically bringing across the truth that the real Jakes, or the real children of Jacob, or the real sons of Jacob, are the true Israelites of the Bible, who are the black people who are considered to be Afro-Jamaican, Afro-American, Afro-Canadian. The blacks, Hispanics, and Native American Indians of Negroid descent. Those blacks who were scattered in all across North America. In the Americas, we came over here on the transatlantic slave trade and the slave ships. So I want to take a look at this just to bring some clarity to those who are not aware of their identity, because the Bible speaks of your identity and tells that you would be disconnected from your identity. We'll get that verse a little bit later on. So if you are a so-called black person, which, black doesn't really tell you your nationality, it doesn't tell you your identity. Black is a color. It's not a nation. It's not the name of a nation, right? So if you are one of these people, then you're going to find out some information about your actual identity from what the Bible says, so that you can begin to make sense of what it's teaching about you. So the real Jakes are the sons of Jacob. They are the true Israelites of the Bible. Again, those are the black people who are scattered across America, Canada, England, the Caribbean islands, to name a few places. We were scattered into different lands because of the sins of our forefathers. Let's take a look at what the Bible actually says about this. Ezekiel chapter 39, verse 27 and 28. That's Ezekiel 39. If you've got your Bibles, you can follow along, or if you want to write this down and read it later on. Ezekiel 39, 27 to 28. Okay, and it reads, "When I have brought them again from the people, and gathered them out of their enemies' lands." See, that enemies' lands means his people are going to be not in their own land, in the land of Israel, but in another land, right? Other places, in their enemies' lands. When I've brought them from the people and gathered them out of their enemies' lands, and am sanctified in them in the sight of many nations, then shall they know that I am the Most High their power, which caused them to be led into captivity among the heathen. But I have gathered them unto their own land, and have left none of them any more there. So what we're seeing here is that the Most High is saying that He caused us to be led into captivity among the heathen. These Western lands that we're living in are, among the lands that we were scattered into, right? Because of our forefathers' disobedience. We were scattered into heathen lands, lands that, we didn't call home before. All right, you don't hear anything of let's say the prophets like Elijah talking about he's living in America and he's going on vacation to someplace else on a plane ride and so on. It's not like he was living in America or or someplace else, right? They were living in the land of Israel, which was their home. Because of the disobedience of our forefathers, they were scattered into other lands that the Bible calls heathen lands, and as such, we were, we just became disconnected from who we really were and who we still are today, but we just don't know it. The descendants of Jacob can be identified today via archaeological finds, inscriptions that are found just all over the world in paintings and drawings and walls and so on. And of course, in the pages of the Bible, once you understand how to read the Bible and begin to see it in a different way. I think it's the movie called, if I'm remembering it correctly, with called Maleficent, I believe. And here, this child was actually separated from her father, which was a curse for her. But in the movie, they separated the child from her father's kingdom with very large thorns, like a great big bush that had gigantic thorns on it, not normal sized thorns, right? And it kept the kingdom away from her, kept the father's palace away from her, kept her away from her father's palace and kingdom as well. And she lived for about 16 years without knowing all of this. And she made life in this new place where she was being hid for, supposedly her protection. But because of that, she was certainly living in a way for all those years, being disconnected from her identity, never knew that there is a kingdom behind those thorns that belonged to her father, and her father was the king that was just behind those great thorns. And so it is for us who were scattered here in the transatlantic slave trade, brought to these Western lands. We have lived for so long and just never knew our identity, but we're teaching these things now, so that, as Christ said, what's hidden is gonna be shouted from the rooftops. Is gonna be revealed. So you're gonna come to this place where, as you start to look into these matters from a biblical perspective and do your own research as well, then you're going to start to learn and understand and see the Bible in a different way than you have been taught in your Christian churches. Your pastors will not actually teach you some of these things, and some of them don't even actually know it. So you can't be really mean per se with your pastors. Of course, some do know, and mainly the ones way at the top, they do know. But the average local pastor just isn't even aware of these things, just isn't aware. So there's only so much you can be mad. Remember, if we want to be mad at the people who brought our forefathers on the slave ships here, and we know all the deal of what they went through. That's one thing, but we have to keep in mind that, after that anger has been processed in our minds, we have to keep in mind that it's the Most High Himself who brought us, or allowed us to be placed into their hands. They couldn't get their hands on us like this. They couldn't have done this to our forefathers. They couldn't have done this to our nation. It was our sin that separated us from His protection, that cut off that protection. Remember how He put a protection around Job? Like He fenced him in and gave him a certain amount of protection that did not allow the enemy to completely destroy him. Well, we still do have that protection, but it has been greatly lifted to allow these things to have happened to us. But the Most High is waking us up, and we're going to be coming more and more, more and more, more and more into the truth of our identity. Why? As a black group of people, we just feel so disconnected. We feel like we're at the bottom of the chain. We feel like we have so many hardships and difficulties in our lives, just in our life in general, that just cannot be overcome. It's a great deal of effort for us to overcome certain things, for us to rise up in our lives, and we're just so defeated. It's a curse, and the Most High is reversing that curse now. The ones who know in the Christian church or in Christianity, they usually hide this information, talking about the ones who know our identity, right? They told us long time ago in the Christian church that we were the Hamites, right? We're actually from Shem, we're not from Ham. And now that the whole thing, the cat's out of the bag and so on, the Christian church has just kind of gone silent on it, and they don't care about making any repentance for having taught this for a long time. They don't give any repentance. They just go cold on it, don't want to talk about it. That's dishonesty coming from the church. And when you say these things to a Christian and to a pastor, they just look at you with a blank face, because there's no way they're going to take any responsibility for the pastors who did these things before they came along. And even if they did it as well in the earlier years of their ministry, they're not going to make any apologies because they don't care. That's dishonesty on their part, yet they say that they're serving God and obeying the Bible. But in spite of all these things, this information is coming to you because the Most High is waking up His people so that you can fall back in line with His Word, with His Torah, for what's ahead for the nation of Israel. Let's look at Exodus chapter 4, verse 6 to 8, and it will begin to show you that the true Israelites were a black group of people, right? A black group of people. Remember, Moses was actually living in what we know today as Africa. He was a black man. Let's look at Exodus chapter 4, verse 6, 7, and 8. And we don't normally think of this. If you go back and watch the Ten Commandments movie with, I think his name was Charlton Heston or something like that, they don't put some of this in the movie for obvious reason. You've got a white man playing this part, the part that was actually lived by a black man who met with God by, what was presented to us as the burning bush in the book of Exodus. But here's Exodus 4, verse 6 saying, And the Most High said furthermore unto him, Put now thine hand into thy bosom. Right? And before this, if you read the verses before, Moses was basically saying, okay, you want me to go and deliver this message to your people to tell them, hey, you're delivering them, bringing them out, and let the Pharaoh know to let your people go. But how are these people going to believe me? So he's working some signs here to help Moses see that he's with him, and signs that are going to be displayed right there in Egypt as well. So he says, put your hand into your bosom, and he put his hand into his bosom. And when he took it out, behold, his hand was leprous as snow. And this is coming after the first sign where he told him, throw down the stick in your hand, it turned like a snake. And he picked it back up. That's the first sign. This is the second sign with him putting his hand in his bosom. So if you think of yourself like putting your hand in your bosom, or let's say in your clothes, in your shirt, that's kind of like what he did. And when he took it out, behold, his hand was leprous as snow. They try to make us think today, and when I was growing up as a youngster, that leprosy is some like a disfiguring, and they just limited it to being a disfiguring of maybe your hands or your face. But when you read the Bible, to be leprous as snow meant that the person's skin turned white, and this is why you're not going to see that in that movie with the Ten Commandments, right? Because they couldn't show this white man's skin turning white. If you've got a wall painted white in your house, can you turn that white wall white? No, it's already white. You can repaint it in the same color. You can freshen up, but you can't turn it white. It is already white, because to turn it white is to say that it was some other color, and it's going to change its look now from being another color. But if it was, let's say, brown or a light brown, yeah, you can turn that white by painting it with the color white, with some white paint. So they couldn't turn this guy's hand white in the movie Moses' Ten Commandments because it's a white man that's playing it. But here with Moses, who actually lived it, who was a black man, as was so many other people in the Bible, unlike what we were taught from a child in church, he put his hand in, took it out, and behold, it was leprous as snow, or it was white as snow. And he could tell that his hand was white, was leprous, right? Leprosy is turning white, right? Skin is turning white. He could tell. Why? Because there was a marked difference between the color of his hand that he put in his bosom and took out, and the rest of his skin, and the color of his other hand as well. And verse 7, and he said, put thine hand again into thy bosom. And he put his hand into his bosom again, and plucked it out of his bosom. And behold, it was turned again as his other flesh. Right? It was turned again as his other flesh, means that while he was looking at this leprous hand, or this white hand, his other flesh was a different color. Like the wall being brown is a different color, and you can turn it into white by painting it white. The other flesh was a different color. It was black. That was his normal color, the normal color of his skin. All right. And behold, it was turned again as his other flesh. Right. So to reverse the sign or the miracle, it was returned to the color of his other flesh, meaning it came back to being just a regular black man's skin that he had. That means his head was black, his hand was black, his neck was black, his foot was black, his face was black. This was a black man, and his hand turned again as the color of his other flesh, or as the color of the rest of his flesh. That means his head was black, his hand was black, his neck was black, his foot was black, his face was black. This was a black man, and his hand turned again as the color of his other flesh, or as the color of the rest of his flesh. Moses was a black man. And it shall come to pass, verse 8, if they will not believe thee, neither hearken to the voice of the first sign, that they will believe the voice of the latter sign. Isn't it interesting that in getting this man ready to go and do this great work in Egypt to deliver the children of Israel by the power and miracles of the Most High, that as a part of the signs that he is working through this man Moses, he includes a sign that has to do with the color of his skin. Now, you tell me, if he says in Deuteronomy 28 that his people are going to return into Egypt again, which we identify as being, the modern Western world, the American system, America, the modern Egypt, just like it's called the modern Babylon, or the daughter of Babylon, like Isaiah says. If he says we're returning here, it seems to me like this kind of sign also points towards what happened dealing with the first Egypt, right? Where he did this sign or miracle of the color of his skin, so that some kind of message was communicated by looking at his skin. And here it is in this modern day Egypt that we are in. It's like the whole issue of the color of our skin has to be looked at again to help us to reconnect with our identity, which we lost, to let us know that we are the people of the book. Because we've been told that the people who are in Israel are the true Jews. And there obviously is no hate speech here. I'm not saying anything that's hateful. This is just the facts in the Bible and the facts that are in our world, the history of our world. That in our world, these biblical things happened, where a man who is clearly here being seen as being black, like the other people, so many other people in the Bible, he's dealing with some color issues here when it came time for the people to be delivered out of Egyptian bondage. Here it is when it's time for us to wake up in these Western worlds, lands, in this place of our captivity. The whole issue of color and us teaching our people who they really are, that you are the people of God. This color issue is coming up again. So it's something that you need to take a look at, right? If you are reading into the articles and the books and all the information that has told you all along that the true people of God are white and are the people who are in Israel, you have to start to read some other books. And that's what I'd say even to the pastors who are just, hell-bent, might I say, on thinking that the true Jews are in Israel right now and has been there since 1948. They need to stop reading only those books that are telling them that kind of information and open up the borders of your mind to accepting the truth, right, by reading some other writing, some other authors' works that you never heard of before, so that you can get a more balanced picture of what's really going on here, so that you can find the truth. If you've been told all along, all your life, that same one thing, that the true Jews are there in Israel, the only way you can really try to verify any of this is to read some other information and to read the Bible itself in a different way. Look at the Bible not just as being a white man's book, like a white Elijah and a white Moses and a white prophet, But now read the Bible and look at it again as being the book of a black people and their God, a black people and their power in heaven. He was their power. The Creator was their power. And when you start to read it um, by taking off, those older spectacles and looking at it in a different way, then you'll start to see the blackness of Moses, a black Elijah, a black Jacob, a black Job. Scriptures like, I think, Job chapter 30, verse 30, Job is showing you, hey, he's really black. So, but when you just come at it from the way you've been taught in church, you don't see these things as easily, and someone has to come and teach you, right? Having different shades of brown, like the soil of the earth. The so-called blacks, Hispanics, and Native American Indians of Negroid descent are the chosen people of the Most High. Okay, just remember, just playing with my daughter, we're digging, making sandcastles, and as I noted, the earth, the more we're digging, I started to see different shades of brown. I think I counted about three different shades of the earth, which was brown. And the more I went down, the darker it got. So when you say black, the people scattered in these lands and known as African American, African Canadian, and so on, and down in Jamaica, Trinidad, Haiti, and so on, the Caribbean islands, among other places too, England, you've got Hebrew Israelites there as well. And we're scattered really all over the earth. So, we're not limiting it to these areas I mentioned. As you look there of different shades, different complexions, right? So when you say black, you're really talking about, just different shades, right? But you have to understand that, this is just a matter of digging into these things and breaking down these things in smaller details, breaking them down in parts so that we can get a more proper sense of what's going on here, that we have really been denied or deprived of the knowledge of our identity. So this lesson here is speaking of you, so-called African American, Caribbean black man and black woman. You are not African or Caribbean. You are Israelites, the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Proper historical research bears this out. And I was going to mention a few books. I was going to have a stack of them here that you can read on to get the. So I'll mention that in the next recording. But if you actually, let me just run and grab that. Okay, so this is one that I found close by that I just grabbed, and the reason why I'm mentioning this is because, as I said earlier, you have to start to read different books. Even the pastors who, you know, excuse me, who are a bit embarrassed when you talk with them because they feel that all their information is so right. That's a problem with Christianity. They just feel that they're just so right about everything. They've got all the truth, right? When their religion is a religion that's actually made up of so many lies. They don't like when you say that, but it's just the truth. But you have to start to read different things to get a better understanding of what's what, so that you can really come to the truth and see if you were told lies all along about the true identity of the real Jews or the Hebrews, right? There's a book you can search for online. I believe it's in PDF format as well, by Rudolph R. Winsler, a black man as well. What's his book? From Babylon to Timbuktu. Books like that will give you a lot of information, right? That's gonna go in depth, so you can trace the history of the Hebrews and where they went after they left the land, that they were kicked out of the land of Israel because of their judgment, their punishment from the Father in heaven. Here's another book, The African Origin of Civilization, Myth or Reality. So, you can look for this one as well. And it just gives some information on real black history that is not usually taught to you in school, right? And so because you're not taught these this kind of information, you just grew up thinking everything else but the truth. It's like we're really living in a matrix, and you're not going to see the matrix properly for what it is unless you dare to go outside of it. All right? Just like the movie I mentioned earlier, Maleficent, I think. When that little girl, excuse me, when that little girl, 16 years, I think about the time when she saw those thorns, when she looked at the thorns, they just looked so scary. But in order to really find what was behind those thorns, the truth, she would have to dare to go in the midst of the thorns, venture in there, go in there, and work her way through it until she would make it to the other side. Only then could she really find out what was hidden, her true identity, and what was behind those thorns. All right, there's another book, The Destruction of Black Civilization, I think. So yeah, so look up some of these books and start to read them and get a better understanding of the movement of black people throughout the earth. Then you will start to come to some better understanding of what the Bible is really talking about in relation to your identity, and that you have been so deceived in these Western lands by those who were your teachers. You are the Hebrew Israelites, and as such are commanded by the Most High to learn, study, know, and observe His Torah. The Torah was given to us. Hear that? To us. Psalm 147, 19 and 20 says, He showeth His word unto Jacob. Right? It's like He shows His word unto the real Jakes. He shows His word unto Jacob, His statutes and His judgments unto Israel. He hath not dealt so with any nation. Right? So that means He's dealt like that with Israel, but other nations, no. So if some other nation is claiming to have the truth, claiming to have some revelation, claiming whatever, they're claiming, they're talking about some other God, because He gave His judgments, statutes, and so on, His commandments to Israel. He hath not dealt so with any nation. And as for His judgments, they have not known them. Praise ye the Most High. So there's no anti-Semitism here in this teaching, and no need to hate any Jews. This is not what this is about. Because when you speak the truth, people are just so quick to jump on you and look at you strange and come against you and so on, Comes with the territory, I guess. Christ spoke the truth, they ended up crucifying Him. And we know at some other time they tried to throw Him over a cliff. Yet He was talking to the people who said they had the Bible in their possession and that the Bible was given to them as to handle. But this is only meant to show from the Bible that the black people who are themselves Shemitic and who are scattered in these Western lands have, they descended from Shem, and they have been disconnected from their true heritage and are from a Hebrew lineage. Okay, so we'll wrap it up here. Jeremiah 17 verse 4, and then we'll hit the book of Hosea. Jeremiah 17:4, talking about your heritage and being disconnected from it, it says, And thou, even thyself, shalt discontinue from thine heritage that I gave thee, and I will cause thee to serve thine enemies in the land which thou knowest not. For ye have kindled a fire in mine anger, which shall burn forever. All right? So the Most High allowed this to happen to us, and we've been disconnected from our heritage. Now we'll consider in other teachings, that He made a promise to restore us and so on. But right now we're just dealing with just you coming to the understanding of who you are. Hosea chapter 4 and verse 6. Let's take a look at that verse. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge, because thou hast rejected knowledge, I will also reject thee. And thou shalt be no priest to me, seeing thou hast forgotten the law of thy power. I will also forget thy children. Right, see here he's saying His people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. And that's what has happened to the so-called black man and black woman. right, that have been scattered in these Western worlds, and we came over here, our foreparents, on cargo slave ships. We have rejected knowledge, but the Most High wants us to accept that knowledge now. We were disconnected from our heritage, and we lacked that knowledge all along, but now He's calling us back. He's giving it back to us, that knowledge. He's waking us up again, right? No longer should you reject knowledge, as Hosea 4:6 is saying, right? He's saying you have rejected knowledge, you've rejected perception. That's what the knowledge means: knowledge, perception, skill, discernment, understanding, wisdom. You have rejected knowledge. But he's saying here now, we basically should more be accepting it, receiving it, connecting yourself back to his knowledge, and knowledge about yourself, connecting yourself back to your real, true heritage, connecting yourself back to discernment instead of rejecting knowledge or rejecting discernment. Connect yourself, plug yourself back into discernment so that you can read these scriptures again in a brand new way than you've been taught in church, and begin to connect yourself again to discernment so that you can discern properly what the scriptures are really saying, so that you can discern, what it's saying about that sign with Moses putting his hand in his bosom and it coming out a different color, putting his hand in and it comes back out to the normal color. Can you discern what is being shown right there? Can you discern what the Most High was doing by leaving something in that scripture to speak to you? Can you plug yourself back into knowledge? The knowledge of the Most High, not the knowledge of your history teachers who taught you other things, not the knowledge of the schools that taught you other things, not the knowledge of your pastors that taught you lies. Jeremiah chapter 23 clearly shows that the pastors are lying to us. Both prophet and priest have profaned themselves, and he says he's going to destroy the lying priests and their children, the lying prophets, the lying pastors, and their children. He's going to cut them off because they have taught his people lies. The truth has come to you, right? The truth has come, and the truth is going to set you free. Take a look at it. Do your own research. If you want to get any more information on this, or have any more questions, be sure to send an email, of course, to yalak-emmett@outlook.com. Shalom.